It's 5 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. We begin our newscast this afternoon with a live briefing from the South Korean health authorities. We'll be getting an update possibly on the distancing rules and other measures being taken to stop COVID-19. Some of those measures are up for renewal or changes around the middle of this month. Geographically speaking, most of South Korea is under level 1.5, but Seoul, the capital area, remains at level 2. It looks like the briefing is going to begin. Let's listen in.
We will also be discussing about the aftermath of the ROK U.S. Vaccine Corporation as well. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Minister of Health and Welfare Gov't. We are now reaching summer, and we believe that many individuals are actually planning their summer holidays. And as of yesterday, we have 15% of the total population getting vaccinated. Thank you very much for your participation. And with the increase of the vaccination rate, we have decreased our infection risks. However, on a daily basis, we still have 500 to even 600 daily tally, and this is why we need to continue to ask you to exert public vigilance. And today at our meeting, we discussed the measures for enabling the publics to have a safe summer holiday vacation. And during the summer vacation, we ask you to enjoy a small vacation with your family members, immediate family members, and also we ask you to have short family gatherings, and if needed, you could also have 2 separate vacations in part. And here are some detailed measures. First, as for the timing and the locations, we will be dispersing these time and locations for the summer holidays. And the Ministry of Labor, they will be carrying out continued surveys, and also they will also look into the periods of these summer holidays, starting from the third week of June until the 3rd week of September. And they will also ask the companies to have a dispersion of these summer holidays so that they do not have overcrowdedness of people going on leaves on summer holidays as well. And as for the companies that also comply with these rules, they will be receiving incentives, and we will also provide updates, real-time updates for the number of people who are congested at these tourist destinations. And we will be also providing information on about 100 tourist destinations, and they will be provided via our updated on the website. And the Culture Ministry, they will also provide an updated tourist destinations where people can enjoy their summer holidays safely. And also, secondly, in accordance to each of these tourist destinations, we will have tailored quarantine officials. And up until now, we have had the advanced booking for the summer beaches, and they will be expanded to about 50 beaches nationwide. And all of these beaches in South Korea will have a show of the congestion rate via 3 colors, and this is aimed at reducing the amount of people congested at a given time. And at water parks as well, we will be limiting the number of users and patrons, and we will also designate quarantine official, responsible official as well. And at lodging facilities, they will be restricted to only 4 people, and as for immediate family members, they will be restricted to 8 people. And third, we will also enable people to get tested for COVID-19 swiftly if they have any clinical symptoms. And in order to increase the accessibility of such testings, we will be bolstering more information on related screening centers as well. And we will also put up in place portable and drive-through screening centers as well. And we will also enable the selling of the self-test kits as well. And fourth, we will also intensify our on-site monitoring and inspection as well. And we will have a pan-government joint team to look at these on-site inspections. And as for the breaches of these quarantine measures, all of them will faced with a zero-tolerance principle. And fifth, we will also intensify the people who are fighting in the front lines of COVID-19 and those in the vulnerable classes as well. And we will also provide the resting times for the people who are working at the front lines, and they will be also provided with ACs as well. And in order to protect the people in the vulnerable class, we will also expand the number of outdoor resting spots to about 8,000. And as for the details, please refer to the press kits that are given out to you. And next, we have some updates on the homegrown COVID-19 vaccines. Right now, we are undergoing clinical trials, and early by July, we are aiming to enhance and commence the third trial of the clinical trial. And the government will also provide pan-government support so that we can develop as soon as possible COVID-19 homegrown vaccines. And we will also, starting from the June, we will also put in place our committee meeting to oversee such a third clinical trial, and we will also intensify and increase the level of financial support for these drug developers as well. And the companies are expected to begin the cross-checkings for the third clinical trials, and as for the details, we have already disclosed the guidelines in advance. And right now, we believe that we could reach such procedures, the preparations for such procedures in the first half of this year, so that we can commence with the third clinical trial in the second half of this year. And as for the R&D workers, we will also inoculate them in advance so that they could go on business trips abroad. And until the day we reach and we develop a homegrown vaccine here in Korea, we will spare no efforts. And it is very important that we secure enough number of subjects for these clinical trials, and we ask for your continued participation in these measures. And next, we have Commissioner Chung Eun-kyung of the KDCA, who will be briefing us of the COVID-19 vaccination updates. I am Commissioner Chung Eun-kyung of the KDCA. Here are our updates for the vaccination front. And as for the vaccination target, and here are some forecasts of our target as well. As of today midnight, we have more than 7,598,000 people getting their first dose, which is about 14.8%. And we have about 68% over the age of 80 and 62% over the age of 70 who have completed their inoculation. And we ask you to visit the designated hospitals for your vaccination on the pre-booked dates. And we believe that we can achieve our target as soon as possible. And we believe that vaccination is the most crucial means to protect ourselves against the COVID-19 outbreak. And after 2 weeks of inoculation, we have confirmed that the efficacy rate reaches about 86%. And you also have the risks of infecting your family members as well, even if you are contracted with the virus. And this is why we ask you to participate in the vaccination rollout. And here are our schedule for June. Here are some details for those aged over the age of 60. And we have expanded the inoculation eligible targets to include those aged 60 and above. And as for the senior citizens over the age of 75, we will be inoculating until the 13th the first dose. And considering the third 3 weeks of interval after that, we also will be full-fledged in giving out the second dose of vaccines as well. And starting from today, we also have the rollout of the Pfizer vaccines for military personnel below the age of 30. And also, as for the essential social workers below the age of 30, starting from today until the 15th of June, we will be having the booking process for the vaccination. And we will also rolling out the Pfizer vaccines. And as for Janssen vaccines, starting from the 10th of June, we will be providing the vaccines at designated hospitals and vaccination centers. And as for these supplies, we have been allocating the people who have to leave the country due to public duties or other businesses. And as for the Moderna vaccines, they will be giving out to those aged below the age of 30. As for the healthcare workers, and we are also continuing to see our eligible recipients. And starting from mid-June, these vaccines can be rolled out. And as for those people who are living in remote areas like islands, we will also increase the accessibility of the vaccines. And we have been cooperating with the Ministry of Defense and so forth starting from March. And we will be using our Navy fleet to also inoculate the people who are especially living in these islands. And as for those people above the age of 30, we will be providing the vaccines, and we will be giving out Janssen vaccines to these people. And as for the vaccination direction after July, the details are as follows. We will have around our full details in June, third week of June. And here are just the gist of our targets. And we aim to provide our inoculations of 36 million by September. And to this end, in July, we aim to inoculate the teachers at preschools and kindergartens, first and second grade primary schools, as well as high school seniors. And as for these teachers and caregivers who have already been booking their vaccination appointments, they will be vaccinated during the summer holidays. And the high school seniors, they will be also inoculated in July as well. And we aim to inoculate over 13 million within the first half of this year. And starting from July, we also will be expanding the inoculation to those below the age group of 50, and we will also spare no efforts. And if it is your turn to get the vaccines, please get vaccinated on a day when you have good health conditions. And the COVID-19 right now is ongoing in Korea. There are many people who are silent spreaders and also those with no symptoms as well. And please note that they could be around us. And right now we have completed the inoculation of the first dose of inoculation to 14.8% of the total population. This is not yet enough for us to protect all of the population. And until September, when we inoculate over 70% of our total population, we need to continue to exert our full efforts to comply with quarantine measures. We need to wear your face mask indoors, also ventilate your spaces, and also keep hygiene measures. And please note these are as crucial as well. Thank you very much.
And that was Commissioner Jung In-kyung of the KDCA with a very detailed update on South Korea's vaccination campaign. And President Moon Jae-in wants South Korea to have given first doses of vaccines to 70% of its population by the third quarter of this year. Chairing a meeting on the government's COVID-19 response, President Moon said that people in their 50s, school teachers, and high school seniors will be able to get their vaccines in the third quarter. If things go as planned, South Korea would achieve herd immunity sooner than the government had originally hoped for, which would enable people to enjoy their summer vacations and the Thanksgiving holiday Chuseok with their families. Moon promised to secure vaccine sovereignty for South Korea by purchasing products that have a high chance of reaching phase 3 of clinical trials in the third quarter, and by supporting the development of domestic vaccines. South Korea is picking up the pace of its vaccination campaign. From today, it's significantly broadening the range of people who can get the shots. The goal is for more than 13 million people to have gotten their first shot by the end of this month. Jang Tae-hyun reports.
People aged 60 to 64 will be able to get the AstraZeneca vaccine at medical facilities nationwide starting Monday. 395,000 are eligible to get the shot, and about 78% of those have signed up for a spot. Health authorities are urging people over the age of 60 to get the shot, as they can get severely ill when infected with the coronavirus, and vaccination can lower the risk of fatality. According to research on those who received the AstraZeneca vaccine in the country, getting one shot is 90% effective against getting the virus and has a 100% prevention rate against COVID-19 fatality. And starting Monday, 350,000 military troops under 30 will receive the Pfizer vaccine. Military personnel over the age of 30 received the AstraZeneca vaccine last month. Vaccinated people will get a badge to signify that they've had their jabs, with even an inoculation sticker added to their personal ID. Meanwhile, first and second grade teachers at elementary schools and workers at kindergartens and daycare centers can reserve the Pfizer vaccine starting Monday if they're under the age of 30. Those eligible can make bookings until the start of vaccinations in mid-June. As of Monday, the country has vaccinated over 7.5 million people, 14.8% of the nation's population. South Korea recorded 485 cases of COVID-19 on Monday. Of the new cases, 454 were local and 31 were from overseas. The health authorities remain on alert over the spread of more transmissible variants and sporadic infections that continue to sprout nationwide at workplaces, restaurants, and bars. 장태현, Arirang News.
In other news, a South Korean court has dismissed a lawsuit filed against Japanese companies by Koreans who were subjected to forced labor during Japan's colonial rule of the Korean peninsula. This ruling contradicts one issued in 2018 by the South Korean Supreme Court, which did order the Japanese firms to pay compensation. The plaintiffs are planning to appeal. Kim Da-mi has the details.
A Seoul court on Monday dismissed a lawsuit filed by victims of Japan's system of wartime forced labor, saying they have no right to bring individual lawsuits against Japanese companies. The Seoul Central District Court ruled that while the 1965 treaty normalizing ties with Japan does not mean individuals lose their right to file claims, the victims cannot exercise this right by suing the Japanese firms either. 6 years ago, 84 victims and their families filed a lawsuit against 17 Japanese companies, including Nippon Steel, Nissan Chemical Corporation, and Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. According to Japan, the 1965 agreement between Seoul and Tokyo includes a compensation for the victims and thus completely and finally settles the issue. Monday's ruling was a surprise to some, especially because it contradicts the 2018 ruling by the South Korean Supreme Court ordering a Japanese steelmaker to pay around $87,000 each to 4 Koreans the company forced to work for it during World War II when the Korean peninsula was under Japanese colonial rule. The latest case is in fact the biggest lawsuit filed so far by the victims of forced labor, and there are a total of 19 lawsuits on the same issue still ongoing. The head of the civil litigation group against Japan, a civic group representing the plaintiffs, called Monday's ruling unbelievable and pledged to immediately appeal to the court. The South Korean government, responding to the ruling, said it will continue to consult with Japan to find a reasonable solution that Seoul, Tokyo, and all related parties can accept, while respecting the judgments of the courts and the victims' rights, and also considering relations between the two countries. Kim Da-mi, Arirang News.
And turning to the economy, the Korea Development Institute says that the South Korean economy is slowly recovering as exports and consumer sentiment improve. But it also notes that the recovery could face risks from the global imbalance between the supply and demand of raw materials and components. Pyeon-ji has more.
South Korea's state-run think tank, the Korea Development Institute, has assessed that the South Korean economy is recovering at a modest pace, as exports maintain their high growth rates and consumption improves. In its monthly economic trends report for June released on Monday, it said exports and equipment investment continue to rise sharply as the global economy recovers, led by the U.S. and China. Exports soared 45.6% in May compared to the same period the previous year, followed by a 41.2% growth in April. Investment in equipment increased, led by machinery investment, and KDI said this trend is likely to continue. Consumption also shows signs of recovery as sales of durable and non-durable goods all went up. Retail sales in April increased by 8.6% on year, and the figure in March was also up by nearly 11%. The KDI said the increase was mainly due to expectations of an economic recovery, as well as the base effect. Consumer sentiment also improved as the Composite Consumer Sentiment Index in May stood at 105.2, up 3 points compared to the previous month. But the institute warned that the global imbalance between the supply and demand of raw materials and intermediate goods could pose a risk to the economic recovery. For instance, it said disruptions in the supply of automotive semiconductors and construction materials such as steel could temporarily stall production in manufacturing and construction. It added that the face-to-face service industry still remains sluggish. 배은지, Arirang News.
The South Korean government plans to cut more than 1/5 of the workforce at the state-run Korea Land and Housing Corporation, LH. This comes in the wake of a scandal in which LH employees allegedly used insider information to buy land in areas slated for development. The Land Ministry said on Monday that the government will cut more than 20% of the nearly 10,000 employees at LH. Also, for more than 500 high-ranking officials at LH, when they leave their posts, they won't be allowed to work at companies with ties to LH. All LH employees will also have to register their real estate holdings and are prohibited from buying land for speculative purposes. A survey conducted last year shows that the vast majority of South Korean senior citizens now prefer to live independently and not with their children. This is another way in which family structures are changing, but some experts also say it could have to do with the pandemic. Choi Won-jong has this report.
People in South Korea aged over 65 prefer to live alone rather than living with their children. According to the Health Ministry's 2020 National Survey for Older Koreans, less than 12.8% of the participants would like to live with their children. That's a 2.4% drop from 2017. Announced on Monday, the nationwide survey given between March and November last year to more than 10,000 people aged over 65 showed more older people were involved in economic activities which provide living expenses for themselves. Their personal income has increased since 2008. According to the most recent one, their personal income was now more than $14,000. The survey also shows 78.2% over 65 were living independently of their children, a jump of more than 11% from 2008. The number of older Koreans who prefer to live alone has been gradually increasing every year. An expert said that could be because of the pandemic.
Many older people have lived independently while cutting out face-to-face contact with their children amid the pandemic, which explains their decision to live without them.
As more than 74% of the participants experienced some difficulty using online services, the expert added that enough social services need to be provided for them.
We use the term aging in place, meaning older Koreans live in the community together instead of living in care facilities. We need more care services that could support those who reside independently.
Meanwhile, more than 74% said the age standard for the older people should be raised from over 65 to over 70. 최은정, 아리랑 뉴스.
The G7 countries have reached a landmark deal for countries to apply a minimum corporate tax rate to disincentivize big tech companies from headquartering in certain countries to avoid paying taxes. The agreement is to tax them at a rate of at least 15%. Companies like Google and Facebook would also face a bigger tax bill in the countries where they actually generate revenue. And this could have some implications down the road for South Korea. Kim Sung-min reports.
Following the historic deal reached by the G7 group on a global minimum corporate tax rate, firms in South Korea are focusing on the possible implication for their operations.
The G7 has taken significant steps this weekend to end the existing harmful dynamic, making commitments today that provide tremendous momentum towards achieving a robust global minimum tax at a rate of at least 15%.
The deal was agreed on Saturday in an effort to end the decades-long race to the bottom where countries competitively lower tax rates to attract corporate giants. The proposal by the US targets the world's largest 100 conglomerates, especially tech giants like Google and Facebook. Regarding the deal, the Ministry of Economy and Finance said on Monday that South Korea could be affected should the G20 group reaches the same agreement, although the impact would be highly limited. That's because the country's current minimum corporate tax rate is 17%, already above the G7 bloc's agreed minimum. The maximum rate, including local taxes, is around 27.5%, implying that subsequent adjustment in the country's corporate tax rates is highly unlikely.
There will not be much immediate impact, but considering that setting the minimum is only part of the entire global corporate tax reforms, South Korea could be influenced by other upcoming decisions like on digital tax.
However, certain South Korean firms that are headquartered in jurisdictions where they're subject to little or no tax could be levied with more deductions, as companies with a profit margin of at least 10% must pay tax on profits in the country where they actually make sales, not just where they're based. The South Korean government said it is still assessing possible implications as there's no clear list of potentially affected firms yet. The country will be able to draw a clearer picture once the deal is discussed further in detail at a meeting of the G20 in July. Kim Sung-min, Arirang News.
Tesla CEO Elon Musk is the latest target for the international hacker group Anonymous. The hackers say they'll be going after Musk in retaliation for what they say is his manipulation of the cryptocurrency markets and his disregard for the average working person. Ian Jin reports.
Over the weekend, the activist hacker group Anonymous uploaded onto YouTube a warning video for Elon Musk, calling the billionaire nothing more than another narcissistic rich dude desperate for attention. During the approximately 3-minute-long video, the group says Musk wields too much power over the cryptocurrency markets and described the devastation caused to many average working people and how tired they are with his attitude. Watchers say a cryptic tweet that Musk posted last Thursday that sent the Bitcoin price plunging 7% over the next day may have been the last straw for the group. Referring to his father having owned an emerald mine in Zambia, Anonymous said Musk was born into stolen wealth and has no clue what struggle is like for most people around the world. In the message, Anonymous does acknowledge that people who invest in cryptocurrency take the risk upon themselves and should know to be prepared for volatility. But the video content continued to focus on what is called Musk's clear disregard for normal people, adding that his public temper tantrums have liquidated their dreams, also slamming Musk for mocking them with memes from his multiple million-dollar mansions. Anonymous, that has previously targeted government and religious corruption, extremists, and abuse of public power, is now threatening to expose the public image it says Musk has carefully crafted for himself over the years. Ian Jin, Arirang News.
And on this Monday, our Seoul In-kyung has a look ahead at the economic data to come in the week ahead. The World Bank will have its global economic outlook for 2021, an update to the one released 6 months ago, as vaccine rollout was only just beginning then. And South Korea will have jobs numbers for last month and data on export and import prices.
The World Bank will present its forecast on global economic growth in 2021 on Wednesday. Its latest semi-annual report projected 4% growth based on the assumption that COVID-19 vaccine rollout becomes widespread throughout the year. The report also suggested the upside scenario. It said global growth this year could accelerate to around 5%, if successful pandemic control and a faster vaccination process take place. Considering the fact that at least 198 countries have started vaccinating against COVID-19 as of today, all eyes are on whether the World Bank will revise its initial outlook higher. On the same day, Statistics Korea would report the number of people in employment last month. In April, the country saw its largest job growth in almost 7 years. The figure amounted to almost 27 million, up 2.5% on year. The agency attributed the growth to a recovery in economic activity, eased social distancing measures, and a base effect from severe job losses in April last year. On Friday, the Ministry of Economy and Finance will release its monthly economic assessment report, Green Book. Last month's report stated that the manufacturing sector as well as investments had continued to improve on the back of robust exports. Considering that South Korea's exports in May were up higher than 45% from a year ago, marking the largest on-year growth in more than 30 years, and that domestic demand has been gradually improving, the ministry is highly likely to assess that the economy is on the path to recovery. The Bank of Korea on the same day is set to release its export and import prices for May. In April, the country's export price index rose nearly 2% a month, marking the 5th straight month of gains. On the contrary, the import price index was down 0.5%, mainly due to a fall in oil prices and the exchange rate, which resulted in raw material prices being dragged down. 서은경, 아리랑 뉴스.
And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.